And now, very happy to welcome the Reverend Mark Fowler.
Good morning, everyone. Um, Always a joy to be with you. I'm just changing the designation so that I can see you periodically as I'm going through this talk. And I do look forward to that time that we are able to fellowship together in person. And I can't help but still say that the work and the opportunity that we've been afforded, if we could even call it that, to be with each other through time and space and to understand our connection to one another beyond physical presence has been an exercise that I think will produce fruit beyond the ways in which we've been separated. I also want to acknowledge a couple of friends who have joined, my dear friend Jeannie Cooper, Reverend Eugenia Cooper, and my friend Kathy Borey, who's joining us from Canada and is actually 3 hours behind. So it's very early in the morning for her. So just want to acknowledge both of them and glad to see them signed in. Also, just want to quickly start with a land acknowledgement that I am speaking to you from my home in Flatbush, Brooklyn, which is the unceded and ancestral lands of the Munsee Lenape people. And that I certainly am living in the benefit of some quite horrible things that happened to those people and continue to happen to those people. So I would just ask that the ancestors would look favorably upon this time that we have together and that they would forgive any actions that I've made that have not been in accordance and honoring with the Munsee Lenape people. And with that said, the word today is demonstration. And it's interesting to me because, there's that first thought that I have about demonstration, which is very much about doing something or proving something or showing something. But there is a deeper meaning of this spiritual experience and this spiritual tool that I think is worth investigating. And so you may have seen in print that the talk today is entitled The Myth of Demonstration, Tried and Proven. And we want to look, I think, at ultimately what's the end of this journey around demonstration. So to start, as you know, for those of you I may not know intimately, I like to start all of my talks with the gospel according to Merriam-Webster, because I think that there is always some value in having some common ground about what is commonly thought about the word demonstration. So it's a noun, and it is defined as an act, process, or means of demonstrating to the intelligent. And I struggled with that for a minute, demonstrating to the intelligence. So it's the act, process, or means of basically demonstrating to the mind that something is so. So a demonstration, a physical demonstration, like pruning a tree, or that there is conclusive evidence of something or proof of something, like a demonstration of her guilt, like we've proven it beyond a reasonable doubt in the legal framework. A showing of the merits of a product or service to a prospective consumer, like a vacuum cleaner. Like there's a demonstration, like this works, buy this. It's also defined as an outward expression or display, like a demonstration of compassion. So demonstration may seem like it's an activity that's solely about what we do. But the invitation this morning is to explore demonstration as a reflection of who we are and who we know ourselves to be, not just what we can do. So, not just solely focusing on the final result, but considering where does the result come from. So, for a few minutes, I want to explore three questions, and I'm putting my timer on because I'm trying to be respectful of time. First question: what do you believe about God? What do you believe about God? Not what do you know, but what do you believe about God? And then the second question I'd like for us to explore is, who are you with God? Who are you? What are your unique characteristics? And finally, what is the future for you and God? Like, where does this end up? What is the future for you and God? And so the first myth that I'd like to explore is that believing God is enough. That solely believing in all that God is sufficient for demonstration. Because part of the struggle of demonstration is that what we are often bringing forth lives in mind. It lives in the conviction in mind. Often there is no proof of it, like showing someone how a vacuum cleaner works, except that which we hold as true in our mind, in connection with divine mind, supreme intelligence. So, whatever it is we envision can know clearly and without doubt actually manifest in the world. Ernest Holmes noted, and this was one of the quotes for this month of exploration, we cannot demonstrate beyond our ability to provide a mental equivalent of our desire. So, if you will, if we say that we want peace in the world, but we cannot actually create a mental equivalent of that desire in our mind, peace will not be. Or at least it will not be as we envision it to be, unless we actually have that mental equivalent. But Holmes goes on to say that we recognize subconscious mind as the great servant of our thought. It is the medium through which all treatment operates. How do we contact this universal subjective mind, which is the medium through which healing and demonstration take place? He answers, we contact it within ourselves and nowhere else. It is in us being omnipresent. And so you see, one of the struggles and opportunities of demonstration as a practice relies on your relationship and understanding of God. So when I ask the question or we explore this myth that believing God is enough, it's not enough just to believe. Because if God remains to you as something over there, then you may find yourself struggling with demonstration. If it is not the indwelling presence of your connection, inextricable connection to God, then you might find that the things that you are wanting to happen may not be happening. And here's the thing, nothing's wrong with you. Because there's a downside to this experience where judgment kind of runs amok. And because you didn't get the thing that you felt you had asked for earnestly in prayer, that somehow something's wrong with you and you're damaged and you are not, God doesn't love you and this and the other thing. Not the case. But where the work is in developing and cultivating that inner relationship with God. That when you say, I and God are one, that you know it. And there's no demonstrate, you have to prove it to anyone. It just is. So we have to devote time, though, to nurture our relationship with God so that when you are speaking a word of healing or comfort or love or whatever is requested, we do so in the knowing acknowledgement of our inextricable connection to God. And without that work, as we speak words of healing or try to even live these words, they fall flat because the source of healing is over there, is beyond us. And our words become hopes and wishes as opposed to declarations. The second myth is that you and God are one. And it's not a myth meaning I don't believe it's true, but the question becomes, do you believe it's true? The second question that I asked is, who are you with God? Who are you in your daily life, in your comings and goings? Who are you? And continuing this inquiry of our relationship with God, what do you know of God at this point? What do you know to be true? I went to the website, and the affirmations of this community of New Thought Spiritual Center of Eastern Long Island are God expresses through us as us. By knowing and practicing universal spiritual laws, we transform our consciousness and awaken to our oneness with God. We positively affect change in our lives and in our world through love and affirmative prayer. Our awareness of divine presence is evolving, and we remain open to refining our beliefs. That's who this community is. So how's that going for you? What's showing up inside those parameters? The pastor of a church that I attended, in his sermon for the day, once referred to a woman that attended the church that he went to as a child. And in her Bible, next to various passages in her Bible, she had written the letters TP. And somebody asked her at some point, what does that mean? Why do you have TP written throughout your Bible next to different verses? She said, those are the verses that I've tried and are proven. Those are the things that I know from my own life experience and from what I've seen in the world that God is. They are tried, or I tried them and I've proven it to be so. What's tried and proven in your relationship with God? In Science of Mind, Holmes talks about this experience, a hypothetical experience for a practitioner, and talks about this person, Mary, who comes for a treatment. And what he says about the experience to the person practicing to be a practitioner is that there is only one law. And Mary could demonstrate just as well for herself if she understood it. But she must first see it demonstrated. And we talked about this in the prayer chaplaincy training class, this idea of like when someone comes to treatment for you, or even they come asking for treatment for somebody else, like what do? Well, often what all we're doing, those of us who have turned ourselves over to sacred service, is just demonstrating what you can do for yourself. We have no special magic power, except that we work to traffic in the idea that there is this one law, that the speaking of which powerfully provides healing to ourselves and to the world. But Mary, had to see it demonstrated before she could believe it for herself. So it takes us again back to this idea that your path to knowing God intimately allows for you to provide treatment and prayer for yourself, for each other, for the community, and the world. And it still allows us to live in the awe of God. Because there's so much of God that we just don't know. And that's magnificent. But there's a place where we can start from and begin to know what you know about God, because everything can't be a surprise at this point. There's some things you can count on God can do, and that you can do in union and in communion and in relationship with God. There's some things that you just know can happen. And in the awe of God, in the development of your relationship with God, that's where the new stuff happens. Things that you've only kind of questioned if it could happen, where you begin to practice and affirm and see that happens too. And then this third and final myth is that you know the future of you and God. And the third question that I'm asking that we explore is, what is the future for you and God? In any of your other relationships, you have an idea in mind of what the future of that relationship could be or is. You may even have a written declaration of you and the person you're in relationship with, of how you said you want things to go. You and your partners and your friends and your family members speak all the time of like what you want to happen and what you'd like to see happen. What have you and God discussed about recently, about the future? So I know for me and for many of you, these are those kinds of prophet kind of conversations where God begins to speak to you and not whisper, because she's tired now. She's been talking to you for a better part of 20, 30, 40, 50 years about the same thing. And so your response is still, who, me? You want me to do what and go where and say what to who and touch who and release what and all of that. But there's a conversation, there's a future that you may have peeked into and couldn't take it, like couldn't even stand the brilliance of it, and had to kind of turn away and say, okay, well, I'll come back to that in a minute when I'm stronger. But where are you going to go to get stronger other than being with God more? Holmes says to us, know your own mind. Train yourself to think what you wish to think. Be what you wish to be. Feel what you wish to feel. And place no limit on principle. The word which you speak would be just as powerful as the words which Jesus spoke if you knew it. But know this within and not only without. Know this within and not only without. After all there is mental action and reaction. If you have reached the point where the inner consciousness produces all things, then your word is simply an announcement of reality. I like that one. Where is it? If you have reached the point where the inner consciousness produces all things, then your word is simply an announcement of reality. There will come a time when demonstration will no longer be necessary. That's Ernest Holmes. And some of you may have had this experience because I've had it, and it's kind of frightening in a way because I have not practiced enough to know it to be so. So I live in a co op. There are two buildings. Behind one of the buildings, it was advertised when I was looking, like this, outdoor area, which was like a small bench and a chair. Like that's all it was. There's nothing out there. I was like, all right, I bought the place and so I did whatever. But in this time, since we've been kind of like emerging from COVID, the idea of outdoor space, of being able to be outside, to sit somewhere, etc., just became more and more important. I began to see in my mind a little patio with maybe a few pavers and a couple of chairs or a couple of benches. And, hadn't talked to anybody about it, but I began to see it in my mind very clearly and see myself out there having my coffee some mornings or whatever it is. And then I heard some buzzing and cutting. And when I went outside, I realized at the end of the day that there were people in the back of the other building cutting down a tree. Now, I don't know all that has happened back there, but I know something happened back there that is now laying foundation for this master plan of this outdoor pagoda or whatever it's going to be. But I'm becoming less and less surprised when my inner consciousness just kind of shows up. When I think of someone and they call me, or when I need more time and a meeting gets canceled, I'm becoming less surprised by that. There's an invitation here for you for us to become less surprised about the nature of God and the demonstration that we see to speak more of it. To conclude, let us all work toward that day when demonstration becomes no longer necessary. And all there is us and God and peace and creation. Let's let that be the future that we live into. It's always a pleasure to be with you. I love you all and thank you so much for just being yourselves.